Encore, and we're going to talk about how our lives shift in perspective when we have an event come up in our lives. Long before women approach the crossroads, such as monumental birthdays, some women experience an event that changes their whole perception of what fulfillment looks like. A diagnosis of cancer can profoundly shift our perspective about what's important to us and what's best for us. When we have this monumental shift, it involves our personal and our professional lives, and we are forced to reflect on our desire, our vision, our capabilities, and our capacity to continue doing the work that we've been doing to this point. We negotiate our workload to navigate the demands of the client work or work that has expectations for our performance while honoring the healthy integration of work, life, and our self care. In today's podcast, I'd like to introduce you to Alexis, who will share how her recurring diagnosis led her to focus on what was important in life and what wasn't. That meant navigating client work and her own expectations. Alexis is the founder of IntelLead, a consulting practice based in Chicago in the United States. And Alexis designs strategies and programs to help her clients develop current and next generation leaders and drive organizational change that delivers results. She is passionate about gender equality and equity and is sought out for her voice as a trainer and a coach on the topic of women and leadership. She also helps clients recruit, develop, and retain female talent. She's a frequent podcast guest around the globe talking about all things leadership. It's my honor today to introduce Alexis as my guest as we talk about personal leadership when navigating client work during recurring cancer diagnosis and treatment. Hello, Alexis. Great to have you here today.
Hello, Patricia. So great to be with you. I'm very excited for this
Yeah.
conversation and so excited our paths crossed as they did.
Yes. It's very interesting how our paths cross and on both sides of the border, right? In the US and in Canada. So Alexis, please share with our audience your story of how you needed to navigate client work during your second diagnosis of breast cancer.
I'm happy to, but I think first, before I talk about the second diagnosis, I need to kind of talk about how my mindset was different from the first time.
Mm-hmm.
The first time I had a diagnosis, which was 8 years ago, last week, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was a shock, and I was actually very private about it. There were a lot of people who knew. There were some clients who actually knew because I actually happened to have been at a client site when I got the phone call.
Oh, gee.
So that particular client was in the know from the beginning. But as far as when she started to ask, well, can I tell others? I was very, very hesitant because again, we have this diagnosis and it's like, what are people going to think? How are people going to react? Clients, our client work, Patricia, it's so important to us. So it took me until after the surgery and after, into my recovery and stuff before I started sharing it with others, including other clients. Now, this time around, and just like last time, this time around, timing was everything. Everything kind of worked out in terms of what I had committed to client work. And when all the other things, the surgeries and everything else had to take place. But this time around, I did it differently. The first time it was basically one client I was doing a lot of work for. This time it was about 3 different clients. I had a lot of things scheduled throughout kind of the navigation arena, so to speak. And I chose to tell them about it and be completely upfront and told them and make the commitment that I would not let it affect what I had committed to them. Even from a finishing it, although our timing may have to shift. And you know what? Everybody was like fabulous about it.
So you say they were fabulous about it. Was it a different reaction then that you were sort of projecting out there you thought might happen? Was it a different experience?
I didn't know. I didn't know what the reaction would be because, when we're doing client work, they're on a timeline. You're trying to do things on their timeline. So in order to, to say I might have to shift some things
Mhm,
was, it was hard to say it, but it needed to be said because I'm one who I'm not going to commit to things that I can't finish.
mhm.
So, but the first things out of all their mouths was whatever you need.
Wow, that's great. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
and I
I'm
go ahead.
the reason why I asked that question is because I would have been shocked by that. Like, it's a shock to begin with when we get the diagnosis and we're on shifting ground. And the last thing we want to really shift is our work with our clients, like to jeopardize our work with our
Mhm.
clients, right? And being afraid of what that reaction might be, that just adds to our stress at the time. So it's interesting that people were understanding that yes, the project timelines need to shift, and they were okay with that.
And as I sit here and I'm having this conversation with you, one of the things that just came to mind that I had never really thought about before was I don't know how much the pandemic might have played into that. Because if you think about the fact that we learned about people in different ways, we learned about our clients, they learned about us differently throughout the
Mhm.
virtual world. I don't know how much that had to play into the reaction, or if it was just I have these fabulous clients who are we're just like whatever you need because it's about you and what you need to do.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, I'm thinking about that too. I think during COVID, some attitudes around people needing time for their well-being did change, and not that it was a fortunate thing, but I think more people became more tolerable of the fact that people need to take care of themselves. And
Mhm.
so it's not project first, it's people first, right? And uh, that I think would be a positive outcome if there was a positive outcome on a
It-
diagnosis of cancer, but it would certainly have made you feel a lot easier about going into your treatment. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Like I said, I mean, I had certain things that I was committed to. Now, what I didn't do and what the scary part was not being able to commit to new things
Oh, okay.
because I didn't know what my course of treatment was going to be. I didn't know how long it was going to play out. I
Hmm.
didn't know anything about the timeline. I knew the surgery date, but that's all I knew. I didn't know any of the subsequent anything and timeline on that. So I couldn't actually say yes to any new work because one of the things for me is if I can't do it in a way that I think it needs to be done, I'm not going to commit to it. So
Yes.
that was kind of scary to be able to say no to things that A, I would have loved to have done, and B, it would have been very helpful to have
Yeah.
that piece
Yeah.
of work.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the scary part as well, right? Because you're going to be limited in what you can deliver, and
Mhm.
taking on another project, who knows, that might not be the best thing for your own well-being as well. So you definitely had to change expectations for yourself. Like, how did you navigate your own expectations for the minimum and the maximum that you could do during that time?
Uh, um, I'm laughing because I had my original surgery and then I had 10 days later I had some emergency surgery and one of my sisters came to stay with me so that I had somebody to help me, and she was laughing that I was doing coaching calls while she was there, 2 days after I was or 3 days after I was out of the hospital. For me, one of the reasons that I mean, I did the things I could physically do that weren't taking too much energy. And one of the reasons I felt I did it is because I wanted to feel normal.
Okay. Mhm.
And being engaged in work is part of how I feel normal. That's
Mhm.
what I do.
Mhm.
So, yes, I took lots of naps, and yes, I, didn't only scheduled one or two things a day because I knew better than to really overtax both physically and mentally, but I
Mhm.
had to do something.
Mhm.
There's only so much things I could stream on television.
So what was best for you was for you to stay engaged in work,
Mhm.
but to know what your limits were. And as long as the work gets done, it can get done at any time during the day or at any time during the week, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, good. So that's about us managing our energy. If we have a spurt of energy and we want to engage in something, then we can do that. And interesting, though, that you had coaching calls during that time because, we need to be totally engaged with our clients, right? But you must have still had this going on in the background for yourself. But I'm sure by that time you were over what you would have considered the worst of it, like the surgery part. And that way you would feel a little more relieved to be able to engage with your clients, right?
Well, if I found for me, it takes my mind off of me. Yes, I was in a little bit of pain, but nothing that couldn't be managed, with a Tylenol or something like that. And again, we're talking short spurts of time.
Yes,
So, and just to be able to not think about me for
yes.
that 45 minutes to an hour while I'm engaged with a client
Mhm.
was that was, part of my healing.
Yes, yes, yes. It actually sends you the message as well that you are still someone who can fully engage in work. You don't have to shut down everything, right?
Mhm.
And give into this thing. Not that we're going to fight anything, but that our body is working for us. Let it work for us during that rest time after surgery or after treatment. Let it do its thing. But at the same time, let's stay engaged and enjoy what brings us fulfillment in life, right?
Right.
And
Exactly.
here in work. Oh, what wisdom would you share with other women business owners like yourself and women executives about being realistic about what you can do in your work with other people in your organization and at the same time maintain the integrity with your own healthcare and your well-being?
Well, I think that's different for everyone because from any surgery, our healing time is different. We manage things different. Some people have complications. So we have to keep all of that in mind. And I think we just really need to know ourselves. We
Mm-hmm.
need to know what we are capable of on a good day and
Mm-hmm.
then say, okay, for me, it was like if I'm capable of doing 4 coaching calls in one day, if I happen to have that, I said one, so knowing that it wasn't going to be too much. And also, again, I was open with everybody, even my individual coaching clients. I would tell them, I said, this is what's going on. Happy to have this call. I would love to have this call. Um, you know, if we find it's different, let's shift. If
Yeah.
we find it's not working. So asking for, I don't want to say feedback from them, but engaging them in the process of being able to talk about it and just say, it's okay so that you have the people around you who are helping you. I think that's one of the keys.
Mhm, mhm. Did you find that some clients, like individual coaching, it did shift the conversation or the mood of the call?
It didn't. And maybe it's because where I was in the process with them, it was none of them were new clients, so maybe that was part
Oh,
of it.
okay.
Um, but no, nothing really shifted. I think what shifted was, I mean, they were always the first question was, how are you? Are you, the caring. Not that they're not caring anyway, but the caring and how they talk, how we opened the calls a little bit. A coaching call is all about the client, but they always wanted it to be about me, at least in the beginning, which I was really touched by.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So the relationship shifted a bit, but it certainly went back the other way. I would
Right.
imagine that helped clients to build skills for themselves as well, such as it's not all about me being the client. I am working with a coach that, the coach has a life as well. And
Mhm.
so for them to be able to express empathy or compassion, uh, would you say that it added to some of the conversations?
I think it added in terms of some of them opening up just a little bit more about
Mhm.
them and their personal life, even though that's not the area I coach in. I coach, executives, I coach things around the work and the business and things like that. But we all bring our personal selves to work. So there is a personal life.
Yes. And I think it does show that as an executive or as a business owner, these things still come into our lives. So because we're a business owner or an executive doesn't make you someone who never experiences something like this.
Mhm.
So be aware of that, even for your clients, to be aware that they are not uh, that they are vulnerable as well. And
Yes.
getting back to the conversation, maybe their conversations were they were able to share more because you were demonstrating that you were able to share more. So I would imagine that added to your relationships with your clients.
I think that's a great point, Patricia. I mean, to me, vulnerability and leadership is really important.
Hmm.
And you're right. I actually had never thought of it the way you just described it in terms of me being vulnerable and opening up allows other leaders to do the same thing. It
Yeah.
shows them that it's okay,
Yeah.
and and now that you've given me some ideas of how I'm going to actually use it in future coaching.
Yeah. I don't like to call it a gift, but it is like an awakening, isn't it?
Mhm.
So, yeah. Hmm. So that's a good segue into the executive encore segment of the podcast, and that's titled "Every Moment Matters." Right? Alexis, please share a pivotal moment when you recognized what fulfillment looks like for you, and it could have been any time.
You told me you were going to ask this question, and I've been trying to remember what pivotal moment or moments, because I think we probably have multiple throughout our career, especially if we've been in the workforces, for many years.
Mhm.
I do remember one where I found early in my career, a pivotal moment was where I found that I loved seeing working with people. I started as in training and development, seeing that aha moment,
Mhm.
helping people see something in themselves or learn something. And I realized what joy I got from being able to help people do that. So, like I said, I still do it in terms of training in front of groups and training and speaking, but also the one on one with, the coaching clients. So, I think that was a pivotal moment. And now I actually think I'm trying to figure out what my next one is. I'm close to a year out from this recurrence, and I've been really trying to figure out what is this, like you said, what's the gift in it? What is it I really want to be doing going forward? And what's this pivotal moment going to look like going forward?
Mhm.
And I just would say, I guess maybe stay tuned because hopefully it's coming this year.
Okay, all right. So we'll ask people to follow you on LinkedIn for sure to stay tuned to what that might be. Like you might have a huge aha yourself in
Exactly.
fulfillment. You've got the foundation, you know that you like to see other people thrive. So this might be your time to think about, okay, what's next in my fulfillment, right? So yeah,
Exactly. How
that's
can I take that to the next level?
take it to the next level. Yeah,
Mhm.
for sure. Okay, so Alexis, let our audience know how to reach you.
I am the best way to reach me is really on LinkedIn.
Hmm.
I'm Alexis Gladstone on LinkedIn, and I think you said it'll be in the show notes. My
Yeah.
website is intelead.com. That's INTELEAD.com. So
Mhm.
either of those two ways, but LinkedIn is usually the best.
Okay, good. Is there anything else that you'd like to share today?
No, I'm just so appreciative of you having me on so we could talk about this
Yeah,
because we, had great conversation about it offline. So I'm glad we were able to bring it online.
yeah. Yeah, it's a pleasure to speak to someone who works with other people and had that experience of, and I'm not saying it was a good experience, but the fact that the first time you were very private, the second time, second diagnosis, you had a completely different experience because you were more open about it. And I think
Mhm.
that might help people who are in that situation realize that it might be best to open up. Now, for me, I'll just share for me, I was very careful about who I shared with. And I think you showed that as well. The second time, you knew who you wanted to share with, right?
Mhm.
Because there's that feeling of what are people going to think? Like, can she still do the work for us? So
Right.
it is very intimidating. So I think you brought a fresh perspective to it, that yes, sometimes opening up to your clients and your employers it helps you, and also adds to their life in a way, because then they can be more vulnerable when they have challenges. I think that's probably the big aha from today's conversation, right? Is that
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. So I want to thank our audience for joining us today, and thank them for following Alexis and myself. Join me each week as I interview other women like Alexis and other thought leaders about finding fulfillment in our work and our life. And sometimes the topic is around fulfillment around after the age of 60, but also around diagnosis of cancer, because we do have those people in our audience that are going through that type of shift in their life as well. At other times, the topic may be about returning to work after cancer. As demonstrated by the conversation today, our ability to share is very important. To receive wisdom is very important, and it's crucial to our overall well being. If you're interested in being a guest, please, no matter what your age is or what your gender is, or even your perspective on well being, please reach out to me. I'd love to have you as a guest. Please visit my website at patriciamura.com and read the weekly blog, which is patriciamura.com/blog, and subscribe to my weekly newsletter. I'm fortunate to have an audience of women who join me Sunday mornings when my newsletter is released, when they have self-care and they sit with their favorite beverage to read my latest insights. Many of my insights come from my guests, such as Alexis. They bring their wisdom, which is critical to maintaining wellness and purpose in our life and work. Thank you. Have a lovely day, and we'll see you next week.